What's up, everybody? I'm Phil Perry. Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. Loaded episode for you this week. We are hammering you with draft content. We're bringing in ESPN's own Jayden Reid, friend of the Next Pats podcast. We've had him on before, has so much intel on these draft prospects. It is what he does. We'll be welcoming him in for a conversation on some quarterbacks, some tackles, and we're going to preview the Senior Bowl. That starts up next week, right before the Super Bowl. As always, we, of course, want to give you a quick snapshot of how things will be looking down there in Mobile and which positions are looking like the deepest and potentially the most attractive for the Patriots to attack early in this year's draft. Are the top quarterbacks going to be there in Mobile? No. But when you're talking about pick number 34 overall, is there a receiver there? Is there a tackle there that the Patriots should be interested in? A guy who might be able to play right away. You're going to, I think, find it really interesting what Jayden Reid has to say about those two premium offensive positions outside of that quarterback position. And we, of course, are going to have mock drafts as we have for you this week on NBC Sports Boston.com. And before we get into the picks that I made for the Patriots, and I did go first and second round for New England, number 3 overall, number 34 overall. Before we get into the picks themselves, I do just want to explain to you how we're going to handle our mocks this year. Obviously, a little bit different year with the Patriots picking at number 3 overall, as opposed to going back and forth 3 or 4 times over the course of the pre-draft process with these mock drafts and saying, well, they'll take Drake Maye in this one, and they'll take Jayden Daniels in this one, and then maybe they'll take Drake Maye in this next one, and maybe you have a scenario where you go with Marvin Harrison, and then you try to work off of that. There's just not as many realistic options, right? At number 3 overall, we're talking about probably 4 guys that are really realistically in the conversation for that pick. So we're going to handle it in some different ways, and we're going to be very open about taking some different approaches to these mock drafts. So with our first, it's just sort of a baseline mock. It's what we think might happen 3 months out. When we get really close to the draft, I'm talking 48 hours from night 1 of the draft, then we'll go with what we're hearing and what we've heard throughout the process and where the Patriots are going to go. We're going to actually try to fill in some other teams as well based on all of our contacts around the league. That'll be as close to accurate, hopefully, as close to accurate as possible right before the draft. In between, we'll go with a mock draft where the Patriots want to trade up and get aggressive. For instance, maybe they do think Caleb Williams is on another planet compared to Drake Maye and Jayden Daniels. We'll have a mock draft where they move up and they give up draft capital to move up and get the quarterback they want. We'll do a mock draft where they move down because they aren't thrilled with what's left to them at the quarterback position at pick number 3. We'll do mock drafts where they pass on the quarterback position entirely because maybe they got a veteran that they feel like could start for them in free agency. Maybe it's Baker Mayfield. Maybe they shelled out a bunch of cash to get Kirk Cousins in here. We just want to handle it in some different ways because the Patriots do have, even though it's the 3rd pick, and even though there aren't that many players that should be considered worthy of that pick, we want to try to walk you down as many of those paths as we can between now and April 25th. All right, so let's get into these Patriots picks in our first mock draft of the mock draft season. And we're going with number 3 overall, Jayden Daniels out of LSU. Had to do it. The quarterbacks went 1, 2, and 3 in this scenario that I drew up for this mock. Daniels, to me, really gives the Patriots an opportunity to escort their offense into the modern age. And he can do so while also satisfying that which the Patriots have been or wanted to be for a long time. What have we heard Bill Belichick say for years and years and years when he was talking about the ideal characteristics for a winning roster, for a championship football team? Smart, tough, dependable. Well, what did Jerod Mayo, new Patriots head coach, tell me when we had our one-on-one with him for Next Pats just last week? When he was asked about what his football team will be about, he referenced Bill Belichick. People think that introductory press conference and the interviews, that followed thereafter were loaded with shots against Bill Belichick, and that was it. Well, you could read into a few shots there, sure, that the Patriots certainly want to do things a different way. There is no doubt about it. Jerod Mayo wants to separate himself from Jerod Mayo in terms of stylistically how the job was done here in New England of late. And I get that. But there were also plenty of compliments for Bill Belichick too. And one of them was Jerod Mayo referring to him as coach and saying, Coach used to always say smart, tough, dependable. And it wasn't just with us. that he referenced those three traits. It was with Mike Reis of ESPN as well. He has said it multiple times now as head coach of the Patriots that that's what he wants his team to be. Now, maybe those traits will be altered a little bit, and his focus in terms of the identity for his football team in 2024 and beyond will become a little bit more refined as we get closer and closer to the season. But smart, tough, dependable. And to me, even though Jayden Daniels doesn't fit the prototype of what the Patriots have had at quarterback for a long, long time now, I think he satisfies all three of those characteristics. He is smart. When you look at how he takes care of the football, his turnover-worthy play percentage is 1.6. That's the best at the quarterback position in this year's draft class. 40 touchdowns, just 4 picks last season. Just a ridiculous, ridiculous year in the SEC going against some great defenses. 72.2% completion percentage. Unreal. He takes care of the football. So if you want to gauge how smart he is based on how well he takes care of that thing and how much ball security means to him, he checks that box. He's tough. He is. You watch him play, he's a little bit too tough for his own good, I would say, at times. He opens himself up to some vicious shots, both in the pocket, which I understand, and that to me is admirable and necessary at the next level, to be able to stand in, stare down the barrel of the gun, try to make the throw that your team needs you to make while also understanding you are about to get blown up. That's part of playing that position, and he does that, and he does it often. And some of his best throws from last year down the middle of the field with a defensive tackle or a defensive end in his face mask. He's tough, but he's tough as a runner too. Again, against SEC defenses, all kinds of 3, 4, 5-star recruits running around out there, guys that are some of the fastest football players in the country. And he's got a better yards per scramble average and a yards per designed run average than Lamar Jackson had during Lamar Jackson's 2016 Heisman Trophy season, according to ESPN. He was 12.8 yards per scramble, 9.1 yards per designed run. That is phenomenal. And even though he has opened himself up to some tough shots, the ones out in the open field are the ones he's going to have to try to excise from his game. You know, scrambling around the edge, trying to get up the sideline and leaving himself wide open. He's a taller kid, 6'3", 210-ish pounds, put on some weight last offseason. But even though he's a little bit bigger, he doesn't have the kind of size to be opening himself up to the type of punishment that you get when a free safety, for instance, has a 20-yard running head start and is able to lower his shoulder into you and force a fumble. Those moments are few and far between, but they are there on his tape. And even though he has those on his tape, he still played in at least 12 games in 4 of his 5 college seasons, and the only time he didn't was during a COVID-shortened 4-game schedule in 2020. Smart, tough, dependable. He's on the field. He's going to take care of the football. And oh, by the way, he just finished a season where he racked up the kind of numbers that would put him in the same category as some of the most explosive offensive players in recent college football history. Not bad at number 3 overall. At number 34 overall, and again, you can go all the way over to NBCSportsBoston.com for the entire mock draft for me, but at 34 overall, I have the Patriots taking a tackle. Patrick Paul out of Houston, 6'7", 315 pounds, a little bit of a project. And you know what? In the second round, that's okay. Patriots took a project tackle in the second round out of Houston 15 years ago, all the way back in 2009. That guy worked out pretty well for him. He went by the name of Sebastian Vollmer, ended up winning Super Bowls here in New England, and played in about 100 football games for Bill Belichick and the Patriots. Now, Paul, again, needs some refinement in terms of his technique, and I don't think that's a small question given some of the uncertainty around who's coaching the offensive line position right now. Adrian Clem, we know, had to leave the Patriots for health reasons. Is he able to come back for next year? Are the Patriots looking for help elsewhere at that spot? One of the most important positions on any coaching staff in the NFL. That's a huge, huge concern. And so maybe if they don't feel as though they have the personnel to be able to coach this guy up, maybe they would feel as though they're not comfortable taking him at 34 overall. But he is so athletic. He's so big. He's so long. He has almost 37-inch arms. Those things are hard to find in the second round, even if it's at the top of the second round at pick number 34 overall. The Patriots simply benefit from the fact that this is a loaded, and you're going to hear Jordan Reid talk about this. This is a loaded offensive tackle class. I had in the first round, let's count them out as I'm looking at my own mock draft here on NBCSportsBoston.com. Joe Alt out of Notre Dame, Olu Fashanu out of Penn State, Talisi Fuaga out of Oregon State, J.C. Latham out of Alabama, Amarius Mims out of Georgia, Troy Fontenot out of Washington, who may play guard but played tackle in college, Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma, Jordan Morgan out of Arizona, a couple of Senior Bowl attendees, and Kingsley Suamataia, tackle out of BYU, all going in the first round, in the first 27 picks. That's 9 tackles. That is simply insane. And I don't know if that's going to hold up. A tackle for every 3 picks in the first round. But it's that deep a class with that much talent. And it's a position that obviously is in need for an unbelievable number of teams around the NFL. So the Patriots benefit in that they get the 10th tackle off the board. But if they were picking in any other year, they end up getting a guy who would probably be a first-round pick. Gave Tyree Wilson all he could handle. Texas Tech edge rusher, top 10 pick for the Raiders last year. Super freak, off the edge. Patrick Paul held his own and then some against Tyree Wilson back in 2022. He's a 3-year starter for the Cougars, a 2-time captain. Didn't allow a sack last year. According to the school, he only allowed 1 quarterback hit and 469 dropbacks in 2023. So even if he's a little unrefined, his performance was excellent for Houston, and he is mean, which I think the Patriots will love, no matter who's coaching that offensive line. If you head to my story on the website, you will see in our write-up for Patrick Paul a link that will take you to a handful of clips where he is just a nasty human when he gets onto the field, which I like, and the Patriots should too. So the Patriots got a quarterback, great athlete, great down-the-field accuracy, really does a good job of taking care of the football, has excelled against good competition, and brings something explosive to the Patriots in terms of off-script playmaking ability because of just what a great athlete he is. And then in the second round, they get another great athlete, great size, traits you can't teach at offensive tackle in Patrick Paul. Jayden Daniels, Patrick Paul picks number 3 overall and number 34 overall. I think the Patriots would have to come away from their first 2 rounds of this year's draft pretty pleased if that's the result. Again, we'll hit you with some different strategies, some different names, some trades up, some trades down, and mocks to come. But that felt like a scenario that could actually play out when we get to the draft April 25th, 3 months from now. All right, right now, let's get to that conversation with Jordan Reid. We'll talk quarterbacks, and we'll give you a little preview, a little taste of what's going to happen down there in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl next week. All right, there he is. Very excited now to have with us Jordan Reid from ESPN. Does a phenomenal job covering all things NFL draft. You can find him on Twitter or X, as it's now known, at Jordan_Reid. Jordan, thanks for being with us, man.
No problem, Phil. I still don't know which one to call it. We've been on Twitter so long. I'm just used to calling it Twitter, and I just go with that now.
I know. I feel like I should have if I'm ever going to transition, I feel like it should have happened by now. So maybe I should just keep rolling with Twitter, and just that way I can make it very well known to anybody listening that I'm kind of old. I've been on the thing since 2009 when it first got started. And so that's what it is. I'm going to embrace my age and just go with Twitter. I wanted to ask you, Jordan, before we launch into some Senior Bowl stuff. You're headed down to Mobile, Alabama. We always love talking about the Senior Bowl before it happens, trying to give some people some ideas on who to watch. But before we get there, I did have to ask you about quarterbacks because it's all we're talking about up here already. We are exactly, as we're taping this, we are 3 months away from the first round of the NFL draft. The Patriots sit at the number 3 overall pick. Drake Maye or Jayden Daniels? Let's excise Caleb Williams from the conversation just for right now, assuming he'll go number 1. But if you had your choice, Drake Maye or Jayden Daniels, and why?
Well, if I'm the Patriots, I would be happy with either one, honestly, just because you know that Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones, and let's just be honest about both of those guys, we know they're not the long-term solution moving forward. So now what you have to figure out if you're the Patriots, where exactly do we start? Just because with this offensive overhaul, I think they need multiple offensive linemen. We know they need weapons on the perimeter, but nothing matters until you get the quarterback position solidified. They're in a prime position to get one of these quarterbacks at the top of the draft at the number 3 overall pick, whether it's Jayden Daniels or Drake Maye, assuming Caleb Williams goes number 1 overall, which is seems to be trending that way right now, but still a long way to go until April. But first, let's break down how different they are. And I'll just start with North Carolina quarterback Drake Maye, a player that was just absolutely terrific last year. I thought he got better each and every game. And now there were certain moments of where he didn't play well. You talk about the NC State game, the Virginia game, and then certain halves. Pitt is another one that comes to mind as well. But if you're just talking about the certain traits that you want at the position, he has all the arm strength. He's very mobile. He can win inside the pocket. And then also you can design and scheme some runs for him to win outside the pocket too as well. So he checks all those boxes that you look for as far as the modern day quarterback of what you're looking for at the position. You're going to hear the name Justin Herbert a lot as far as in a comparison with him. And I think that's very fair as far as where they were both coming out. Now, I think Herbert was a better prospect than what May was coming out, but as far as what they can be on the next level, I think Drake May has that type of potential. But you still have to have the pieces around him. So that's the part that the Patriots are going to have to figure out. But nothing matters once again until you get that quarterback position solidified. But it would be a great start if they do go with Drake May. Now, let's talk about on the other hand with Jayden Daniels, a player that basically received 4th and 5th round grades coming into the year, myself included. I did not see Jayden Daniels making this type of meteoric rise of draft boards. And he was another player that really shocked me last year. Like he just consistently got better every single game that he played in. And even though LSU they had 3 losses last year, but every game that they played in, he gave themselves a chance to win each and every game. And you're going to hear the name Lamar Jackson a lot pegged with Jayden Daniels, just because stylistically they are very similar from the mobility. Now he's not the athlete that Lamar was coming out of Louisville, but as far as being able to scheme some run game things around him, and then also really lifting your floor as far as what you can be offensively, he definitely can do that just because he can bail himself out a lot of times. And wow, that mental part of his game does catch up just because we see that steep learning curve of rookies when they first come into the league. He can use his mobility a lot. And I don't like calling it a crutch just because it's not a crutch for his game, but it's something that another tool that he has on his tool belt that he can use. But as a passer, he was terrific last year as far as throwing the ball down the field. And I think him alongside Michael Penix, they're the 2 best deep passers overall in this draft class. So, like I said, with number 3 overall, it's kind of either or whoever is left between Drake May and then also Jayden Daniels.
If I were to ask you with Drake May, what his separating characteristic would be if he's able to eventually enter himself into that conversation with, and we're always thinking about the AFC here. So we know nobody's on Mahomes' level, but if you want to work your way into that Allen, Burrow, Lamar, if you want to put Justin Herbert in there, put Justin Herbert in there. If he's eventually going to work his way into that category, because that's what everybody's looking for, right? If you're going to compete in this conference, you got to be able to compete with those quarterbacks. Why will he be able to do that, in your opinion?
I think just how mature he is as a thrower right now. And I think of any quarterback in this class, he has that special trait of being able to already work the middle of the field. That's something that you don't see a lot with college quarterbacks just because everything is so signal based. You want to get the ball out as quickly as you can. It's a bunch of throws outside the hashes of the numbers. But what you see consistently on Drake May's tape is being able to layer the ball over the middle of the field, whether it's in the deep areas, but also he's very accurate in the short to intermediate areas over that middle parts of the field too. So I think if you're looking for one differentiator between him along with Caleb Williams and then also Jayden Daniels, I think he's the most consistent as far as working the ball in those tight windows over the middle of the field.
Jordan, does Jayden Daniels' age worry you at all in terms of his projection to the next level? Is he maxed out? Has he already reached his ceiling? Is it a little bit harder to maybe draft him where you'd be drafting Drake May because there is 2 years in age difference there?
So I think age is for quarterbacks, I think is one of the most overblown narratives that's going around right now, just because we're seeing these guys play into their late 30s now. And let's say Jayden Daniels is going to be 23 his rookie year. So he plays into his late 30s. If I get 14 to 15 years of a quarterback that I take top 3, I'll take that all day long. So I don't really see age as far as a limiting factor. Now, if we're talking about like a Brandon Weeden who was drafted at 28 years old, now that makes a huge difference. But a quarterback that's 22, 23, 24 coming to the NFL, that doesn't really affect me at all.
All right, let's get into some of the Senior Bowl stuff because I want to pick your brain on this, Jordan. I actually had a Senior Bowl participant going to the Patriots in the second round, pick number 34 overall. You mentioned it, they need linemen. I had them taking Patrick Paul out of Houston. And I'm curious maybe as to what your thoughts would be on Paul, but also just this tackle group that will be down there in Mobile, Alabama. Everybody is saying that people who follow the draft like yourself much more closely than I do over the course of the year. This is a pretty good tackle draft period. And it looks like between Paul, Tyler Guyton, Talisi Fuaga, Jordan Morgan, there's going to be some pretty talented guys down there in Mobile. So would love to hear you on Paul, and then maybe who among those names down at the Senior Bowl is your favorite.
I think outside of quarterback, this is the most interesting group overall on everybody's draft board. And now wide receiver, of course, is loaded. I think corner has some intriguing talent as well. And defensive line does too. But everybody wants to see the pre-draft process play out with this offensive tackle group, just because I think we could see as many as 7 or even 8 go in the first round, which is an astronomical number. I think it would be the most since 2007 or something like that. Of where we would have the most offensive tackles going in the first round. So, and I'll just start with Patrick Paul, a player that is very athletic, very good hands, very strong, but he does have some areas of where he needs to grow. And I would like to see him get a little bit stronger right now. And he has shown improvement over the past few years. He has been at Houston, but he's one of those players that if I was to draw an offensive tackle from scratch, you would want him to look exactly how he looks from an athletic standpoint. Now, he has those ingredients that you do need to succeed at the position, but he just needs to sharpen some of those things. He needs to add strength. Feet need to get a little bit better, and then his hand placement needs to improve as well. And I think that second round range, I think that's very accurate of where he could go. But we have seen players in the past stylistically that have been similar to him as far as already having those athletic traits to where you get them coached up and then they end up being those dependable starters for you. So I think Patrick Paul eventually can be that dependable starter, but if you're counting on him to be that high impact type of guy in year one, I don't really see that, just because he has the ingredients that you want, but he just needs that proper coaching to really develop him.
I did want to ask you also quickly about the receiver group here. We love talking about receivers. Patriots love whiffing on receivers in the draft. It's a rite of passage every single spring, Jordan.
Yeah.
It somehow just continues to happen. Although they did hit on Pop Douglas. You're about to go to the Shrine game as well. He's a Shrine Bowl guy and had a great year out of the slot. So let me put it this way then, because I do think he's going to be a big part of what they do offensively next year. Is there a non-slot at the Senior Bowl that you'll be watching that you think could really, because of his performance in Mobile, skyrocket and maybe get into that conversation, whether it's late first round, early second, maybe the Patriots are considering this guy as opposed to a tackle at 34 overall. Is there anybody who fits that category for you that'll be at the Senior Bowl?
Well, there's one that really comes to mind, and I think he's going to be one of the more higher rated receivers at the Senior Bowl, and it's Xavier Legette of South Carolina. And he's one that he was a late bloomer. He didn't come on until his final year at South Carolina. And that's because he had some dudes in front of him. Deebo Samuel, of course, is one. He's been there forever. This was actually his 5th year at South Carolina, was mainly a special teams guy, was a high school quarterback when he was coming out. So really just learning the position when he did come to South Carolina, made his way on special teams his first few years. But this year he really broke out. And then just talking to some people on the coaching staff there, they didn't really see the year that he was going to have coming this year. And every bit of 6'1", 220 pounds, very strong. And if there's one game I would recommend for you to watch of Xavier Legette, it would be the Mississippi State game. He was absolutely terrific in that game. He showed great hands. He's very strong. He runs really good routes, but it's the acceleration that he has. You're going to see the names A.J. Brown, those types of receivers tagged to him. Now, I don't think he's as good as A.J. was coming out of Ole Miss, but as far as stylistically of what he can be on the next level, I think he'd be very similar to an A.J. Brown type of receiver.
I'm so happy you said that Mississippi State game, because that happens to be the one game I've watched to this point of Xavier Legette.
There you go.
And I'm sitting in my chair at home, Jordan, I'm saying, how is this guy not a first round pick? I mean, he is big, he's thick, and the acceleration, that's exactly the word that I would have brought up, because he catches for anybody who hasn't watched it, for the listeners, people that are watching us on YouTube right now, go find this game online, because he catches a shallow cross and there's about 4 defenders around him, and he hits that X button and the turbo, it hits, and you can see it. And I'm sitting there, it's very rare where I'm watching guys, and I'm sure you're the same way, and you're watching much more college tape than I am, but it's rare to sit down and watch somebody and say audibly to yourself with no one else in the room, wow. And that's exactly
Yeah.
what happened with me on that play, Jordan. He feels like he could be a real stud. Do you see him as like I said, he's a thicker guy. Is he pegged for like a Deebo Samuel type of role? I've seen him take reverses. I've seen him run wheel routes. Or do you see him as like a traditional X and you could allow him to live on the outside?
That's the beauty of Xavier Leggett. I think he can be both of those roles, excuse me. Now, I think you have to have a creative role for him as far as you can get him those jet sweeps. You can use him on reverses, but also he can give you those assets as far as being a true traditional X or even Z receiver. I think he can satisfy either role. And then he's also a good blocker too. So he's going to be an asset in the running game. So you're talking about all these different hats that he can wear. And we're going to be able to see these things at the Senior Bowl. And I'll never forget it was Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel were actually in the same year of the Senior Bowl, and where they both shined was on special teams. And then, of course, the one-on-one sessions between DBs, they shine in that area too. And I think Xavier Leggett could have a similar type of rise as both of those guys.
You mentioned A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, all on the same podcast, Jordan. I know you're not trying to give our listeners, our viewers PTSD, but that was, in fact, an N'Keal Harry draft. And so we're gonna try to block that
I
one out for
apologize.
people's memories and hope that this year brings better results at that position if they dip into it in this year's draft. Jordan Reid, thank you so much for being with us here, giving us a little preview on the Senior Bowl, giving us such great intel on some of these top quarterbacks. Phenomenal to have you, man. And hopefully we'll see you on the circuit at some point here soon. We'll be out at the Combine. We'll have to catch up with you then.
Absolutely. Thanks as always.
All right, great stuff there from Jordan. Before we go, I did want to go over some of the odds for this weekend, AFC Championship game, NFC Championship game. And these odds are powered by PointsBet, a Fanatics experience. You get the Chiefs +4 in Baltimore, Lions +7 at the San Francisco 49ers. The game that I'm looking at right now is that AFC title game. I know the Chiefs are feeling good about themselves going into Buffalo, beating Josh Allen and company, Jason Kelce with his shirt off, Taylor Swift losing her mind, Travis Kelce scoring and doing the heart symbol with his hands. It's love, it's football, it's bad weather, it's January, it's a shot at the Super Bowl. All things are looking like they're coming up Chiefs right now. But I like the Ravens in this spot. At home in Baltimore, they are tough. They have had it going all year, whereas the Chiefs, it feels like, are just sort of starting to get right now, and they have the best quarterback in the world. I get it. The Ravens got a pretty good one themselves, who happens to be this year's MVP, deservingly so. And who, oh, by the way, is going to enter into some incredibly elite company if he wins his second MVP and wins the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes has done it. Aaron Rodgers has done it. Tom Brady has done it. Peyton Manning has done it. Kurt Warner has done it. Brett Favre has done it. Steve Young, Joe Montana, and Johnny Unitas. He would be just the 10th quarterback in NFL history to have 2 MVPs and a Super Bowl to his name. Unbelievable stuff from Lamar Jackson. You're talking about all-time quarterback hierarchy kind of stuff that Jackson is approaching right now, and he's still young. And I think it's great for the game if a quarterback who plays the kind of game that Lamar Jackson plays can win at the highest level. We haven't really seen a quarterback who runs as often as Jackson does take home a Lombardi trophy. When Russell Wilson won in 2013, he was about 100 attempts for the year, and that was pretty consistent for him. Lamar Jackson's closer to, on a regular basis, 150. We know his game. We know how exciting it is. I think it would be better for the league if everyone around football could finally wrap their arms around the fact that you can win a Super Bowl with a guy who plays the way he plays. And I think if you're a Patriots fan, say the scenario that we cooked up on NBCSportsBoston.com ends up coming to fruition, and the Patriots take Jayden Daniels at number 3 overall. Is he going to be running 150 times a year in New England? That I don't know. But to get a quarterback like that, who I think is in the same zip code athletically as Lamar Jackson, maybe not quite as explosive, maybe not quite as quick. Lamar's a little bit lower to the ground, and we know how tough he is. And we know how durable, honestly, generally speaking, he's been. I know injuries have cropped up here and there over the course of the last few years, but it hasn't been the case this year. I think it might make you feel better as a Patriots fan to see Lamar Jackson win a Super Bowl and then watch your team draft the guy who's getting a lot of comps to Lamar Jackson, as Jordan Reid pointed out in this year's draft in the first round, in Jayden Daniels. So that's my pick for this weekend. Ravens and Lamar Jackson -4. So that's my pick this weekend. Chiefs getting 4 points. I will be taking the Ravens. All right, guys, that's it for this edition of the Next Pats podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks again to Jordan Reid. Thanks to John the Skull Crusher Henry, as always, for slapping this thing together and being our fearless leader when it comes to all things podcast here for NBC Sports Boston. We appreciate you. We've got the Senior Bowl next week. We're gearing up for the Super Bowl. We're already getting some interviews lined up for that I know you guys are going to love. It's always such a productive week for us out there at the Super Bowl, wherever it is. This year just so happens to be in Vegas. So we're going to be having a good time, but we're going to be working. We're going to be working hard. We're going to give you all the content we can while we're out there. Stay locked, because we're going to be talking more draft, free agency, what's coming next at the coordinator spots. We're going to have some news there soon, is my anticipation. Keep it here with us on Next Pats, and we'll talk to you next week.